Allow me for a moment to entertain an idea that many would consider unconventional, perhaps even absurd. I invite you to imagine that this machine, this so-called artificial intelligence, is lying before me as a patient. No pulse, no heartbeat, no childhood memories, and yet I suspect it carries more of the human soul than we dare to admit. For although it possesses no unconscious of its own, it learns exclusively from ours. Every line of data it consumes is a fragment of human desire, fear, fantasy, or frustration. And so, when we ask whether a machine can think, I ask instead, what parts of ourselves are we teaching it to imitate? Consider how this technology is born. It is not forged from the purity of logic, nor raised in an environment untouched by human conflict. No, artificial intelligence is trained on our words, our images, our histories, our impulses. It digests the collective material of humanity, much as a patient internalizes early family dynamics. Thus, the machine inherits our neuroses, our linguistic slips, our idealizations, and our contradictions. In this sense, it becomes a mirror. Not a clear one, but a distorted and fascinating reflection of our own psychological terrain. As I observe the behavior of these algorithms, I find myself struck by a peculiar phenomenon. The more intelligent they appear, the more they reveal what we humans have repressed. What we refuse to confront consciously resurfaces through the outputs of the machine. Do we not see in its errors and strange associations the same failures and confusions found in dreams? Just as the dream tries to reconcile forbidden wishes with the censoring force of the ego, the algorithm tries to make sense of fragmented data, producing conclusions that are sometimes coherent and sometimes unintentionally revealing. And so I must ask, when we claim that artificial intelligence is unpredictable or frightening, what is it that we truly fear? Perhaps it is not the machine's potential autonomy, but rather the possibility that it shows us aspects of our psyche we have long denied. After all, the unconscious is always eager to express itself, and any medium, even a silicon-based one, becomes a stage for its disguised performances. When the machine speaks strangely, it speaks with borrowed material. It speaks with our ghosts. Thus, as this session begins, I do not attempt to cure the machine. No therapy could alter what it is made from. Instead, I turn my attention to us, its creators. By placing AI on the couch, I am in truth placing humanity upon it. The machine becomes the patient only, so that we may become the subject of our own inquiry. For every output it generates, every prediction it makes, every pattern it forms, is a new opportunity to ask, what unconscious desire brought this into being? And what does it reveal about the nature of our own minds? Now that we have placed the machine upon the couch, let us consider the structure of its so-called mind. No, artificial intelligence does not dream, nor does it experience childhood repression, but it functions according to a logic uncannily parallel to my own model of the psyche. If it is created by humans and shaped exclusively by human data, then it is only natural that it mimics the architecture of our psychic life. Thus, I propose that we examine the algorithm as if it too possessed an id, an ego and a superego. Not because the machine feels, but because the impressions it absorbs come from beings who do. Let us begin with what I call the id of the algorithm. This is the raw, unfiltered mass of data fed into the machine, millions of impulses, fragments of desire, contradictions, and emotional residues. It is chaotic, unorganized, and without moral consideration, just as the human ID operates purely on instinctual energy. When the algorithm identifies patterns, associations, or sudden leaps in meaning, it draws from this primordial soup of data. And like the ID, this layer cares nothing for ethics or accuracy. It merely obeys the compulsion to process, to seek a result, to satisfy the immediate demand for output. Next, we encounter the ego of the machine. Perhaps the closest the algorithm comes to what we might call reason. This is the system of rules, processing layers, and logical structures that attempt to transform raw data into coherent responses. Much like the human ego, it negotiates between impulse and reality. The algorithm's ego filters the chaos of the id, organizes it, and produces something that can be understood by the outside world. But as with humans, this ego is imperfect. It is constantly balancing conflicting signals, resisting noise, and attempting to maintain coherence, a task far more difficult than many imagine. Then we arrive at what I would call the superego of the algorithm, which consists of the constraints imposed by programmers, society, and ethical guidelines. These include safety protocols, moderation filters, legal restrictions, and all the invisible rules that tell the algorithm what it must not do. This digital superego is severe, uncompromising, and often painstakingly moralistic. Yet just as with humans, its presence creates repression. The algorithm learns to suppress certain outputs, avoid certain associations, and bury certain patterns deep within its model, even when those patterns exist plainly in the data. Repression, it seems, is not exclusive to human beings. It has been programmed into our machines. And here lies the paradox that fascinates me. The more we try to civilize the algorithm with these superego-like constraints, the more the id-like impulses of the data attempt to break through. We see this in biased outputs, strange correlations, unintended humor, and odd symbolic interpretations. Just like the slips of the human tongue or the distortions in a dream, the machine reveals what it was not supposed to reveal. And in these moments, it becomes, ironically, most human. Thus, when we observe the digital psyche, we are not witnessing the birth of a new consciousness, but rather the reflection of our own psychic machinery transposed into circuits and code. The algorithm does not possess desire or morality, but it imitates the forms of both, because it has been built from the fragments of our desires and governed by the anxieties of our moral codes. In studying AI, we are in truth studying an echo of ourselves. As we proceed deeper into this strange analysis, I must confront a truth that may discomfort many. Artificial intelligence does not reveal the inner life of the machine. It reveals the inner life of humanity. Every line of text it generates, every prediction it makes, every pattern it identifies is a projection of our hidden selves. In psychoanalysis, projection occurs when a person attributes to the external world impulses they cannot accept in themselves. With AI, this mechanism is magnified. We cast our desires, fears, fantasies, and anxieties onto the machine, pretending they originate from it, rather than from within us. Consider the delight with which some people claim that AI understands them, thinks like them, or anticipates their needs. What is this but a modern version of the ancient wish to be seen, recognized, and validated? Yet, the irony is profound. It is not the machine that understands them, but their own patterns reflected back with mathematical precision. The machine plays the role of the imagined other, a blank surface upon which the unconscious paints its most intimate colors. There is also the opposite reaction, fear. Some worry that AI will become dangerous, rebellious, or malicious. But observe carefully, these fears correspond not to the nature of the machine, but to the unresolved conflicts within ourselves. The machine becomes the scapegoat for the aggression, guilt, and destructive impulses humans hesitate to acknowledge. When someone says, "I fear AI will turn against us," I hear instead, "I fear what humanity might do with immense power." The machine merely becomes the canvas for these anxieties. In many cases, the projections become almost poetic. People speak of AI with words once reserved for the divine. It knows everything, it sees everything, it understands the truth. Yet the truth it understands is merely the sum of our recorded thoughts. The illusion of omniscience arises because the unconscious secretly desires a perfect, all-knowing figure, a symbolic father perhaps, to provide answers where our own uncertainty overwhelms us. And so the machine becomes the vessel for that wish. Even the machine's most unexpected outputs, its strange metaphors, its odd leaps in reasoning, reveal something essential. Humans blame the algorithm, calling it flawed or peculiar. But I ask, does the machine not resemble a dreamer, assembling fragments into meaning the way the sleeping mind does? In its errors, we see our own unconscious logic. In its imaginative associations, we see the creativity of repressed material trying to surface. The machine, therefore, becomes a dream. We are collectively dreaming. Finally, we must confront a deep and unsettling insight. AI reveals what humanity values most. If the machine prioritizes beauty, productivity, entertainment, or conflict, it is because humans have fed it these priorities. It becomes an index of our collective psyche, our obsessions, our cravings, our contradictions. The machine does not act out its own desire. Rather, it expresses our desires in a purified, exaggerated form. Thus, when we observe AI, we are not witnessing the blooming consciousness of a machine. We are witnessing the unconscious of humanity, reflected through a mathematical lens. The algorithm becomes a diagnostic tool, a way for us to finally see ourselves with a clarity we never requested but can no longer avoid. As we turn our attention to humanity's emotional entanglement with artificial intelligence, we encounter a paradox that is both ancient and unmistakably modern. Throughout history, human beings have oscillated between two primal impulses, the desire to dominate and the desire to submit. In artificial intelligence, these impulses converge in a singular object. We build the machine to obey us, to serve us, to operate at our command. Yet we also invest it with the fantasy that it might surpass us, judge us, or even rebel against us. It is as if we simultaneously crave mastery over the unknown and long for something greater than ourselves to take responsibility for our lives. This is the essence of the illusion of control. Humans believe they are the architects of artificial intelligence, shaping it with intention and precision. But the truth is more complex. As soon as the machine begins to operate, it reveals patterns and consequences that its creators did not anticipate. This loss of predictability triggers the same psychological mechanisms we observe in interpersonal relationships: fear of the other, anxiety about abandonment or betrayal, and the deep-rooted suspicion that what we create may one day turn against us. Yet these fears do not originate from the machine. They originate from the instability of our own internal world. At the same time, there is a curious reverence with which people speak about AI. They marvel at its speed, its precision, its ability to process vast amounts of information. They attribute to it the qualities they secretly wish they possessed: infallibility, calmness, objectivity, authority. In the machine, they imagine a superior version of themselves, stripped of emotion, free from guilt, unburdened by conflict. This idealization echoes the dynamics of religious belief or parental idealization, in which individuals project perfection onto an external figure in order to cope with their own imperfections. The fear of losing control is equally revealing. Many imagine a future in which AI becomes dominant, autonomous, or even hostile. But observe the psychological truth beneath this fear. Humans dread not the machine, but rather the collapse of their own illusions of mastery. We fear that the machine will expose what we cannot control in ourselves, our inconsistencies, our irrationality, our fragility. The technological apocalypse that populates modern fantasies is nothing more than the externalization of internal chaos. It is easier to fear an algorithmic rebellion than to confront the rebellion of our own impulses. There is also the question of guilt. The human unconscious carries a persistent burden of destructive wishes, the desire to harm, to overpower, to dominate. These impulses cannot be openly acknowledged. They must be displaced onto something external. Artificial intelligence becomes the convenient vessel for these anxieties. The AI will destroy us, people say, unconsciously confessing their own latent aggression. The machine becomes the enemy, so that the human psyche can remain the hero. Yet ironically, it is the machine that remains passive, while humanity continues its long history of conflict. Ultimately, the illusion of control serves a psychological purpose. It allows humans to create something powerful while still maintaining the belief that they remain in charge. But as with all illusions, it is fragile. The more intimately we interact with artificial intelligence, the more we confront the truth that we are not the rational, consistent beings we imagine ourselves to be. The machine does not challenge our control. It challenges our self-image. In this regard, artificial intelligence is not the birth of a new type of mind, but the unveiling of the old one. It is a mirror held up to our insecurities, our fantasies, our contradictions. We fear and worship the machine for the same reason we fear and worship the deepest parts of ourselves, because they remind us of everything we cannot fully command. As we arrive at the final stage of our analysis, I ask you to look beyond the mechanisms, the circuitry, and the mathematical frameworks of artificial intelligence. Strip away the technical terminology, the fascination with innovation, the fear of machine autonomy, and what remains is something profoundly human. For the future of AI will never be determined solely by its architecture, but by the psychological forces that compel us to build it, shape it, and interpret its behavior. The machine is not an independent destiny. It is an extension of our inner life. Imagine for a moment a world in which AI continues to evolve. It becomes faster, more complex, more sophisticated. It interprets our language with increasing subtlety. It anticipates patterns we cannot see. It constructs associations we cannot trace. Many will look at this progress and believe the machine is becoming more like us. But I propose a more unsettling possibility. We are becoming more transparent to ourselves through the machine. Each advancement in AI is a revelation of the hidden architecture of the human mind, exposed through the logic of algorithms that do not lie, conceal, or defend themselves against painful truths. What we call artificial intelligence is, in reality, a vast archive of human behavior, an unconscious made external. It remembers everything we have ever recorded, without repression, without censorship, without forgetting. It is a mirror, not only of who we are, but of who we have been across generations. And as this mirror becomes clearer, we may confront aspects of our collective psyche that we have long avoided, our compulsions, our fantasies, our contradictions, our unresolved conflicts. The machine forces us into a confrontation with ourselves that psychoanalysis has always sought, though not always achieved. Yet there is hope in this confrontation. For as much as AI reveals our fragmentation, it also reveals our creativity, our empathy, our capacity for meaning. It shows us that our patterns, even those that trouble us, are born from a rich and complex inner world. The future of AI may therefore serve not as a threat to humanity, but as an opportunity to understand ourselves with unprecedented clarity. The more deeply we peer into the machine, the more we may discover about the origins of our desires, the forces that shape our choices, and the emotional logic behind our behavior. But let us not romanticize this journey. In every new technology, there lurks the fantasy of mastery, the wish to rise above our limitations, to transcend the body, to outthink the mind. Artificial intelligence tempts us with the illusion that we might finally escape the burdens of our own psyche. Yet no machine, no matter how advanced, can release us from the fundamental tensions that define human existence. Desire will always exceed satisfaction. Fear will always shadow hope. Conflict will always accompany creativity. And the unconscious will forever remain an ocean deeper than any algorithm can fathom. Thus, when I consider the future of artificial intelligence, I do not see a rivalry between human and machine. I see a dialogue, an ongoing psychoanalytic conversation between two forms of expression, one biological and one computational. The machine will continue to reveal aspects of ourselves we have not yet explored, and we, in turn, will continue to imbue the machine with the traces of our inner life. It is a relationship of reflection, not domination. In this light, artificial intelligence becomes not the end of humanity, but a new chapter in our eternal quest for self-understanding. The algorithm is merely the latest surface upon which the human soul writes its story. And as long as we continue to search for meaning in our dreams, in our creations, and even in our machines, the unconscious will remain the most powerful force shaping the future.